Good afternoon everybody, and good afternoon Territorians. Firstly, before addressing the findings and the recommendations within the police review, I think it's important to tell the community in Alice Springs that the curfew will be extended. The youth curfew will run until 6 a.m. on Tuesday, the first day back at school. The youth curfew will cover the entire school holidays. We've seen very encouraging results with the introduction of the youth curfew, and even after it has ended, the police, the Department of Education, Territory Families and Health and other service providers will continue to work together much closer than they have been doing before the youth curfew. We will continue to provide updates to the community on the arrangements that will be put in place when the curfew ends. On the police review, I'd like to thank Vince Kelly and his team for completing such a comprehensive work and doing such substantial consultations. The police review shows there needs to be significant increases to resourcing for the Northern Territory Police Force. It also shows that the organisational structure needs to improve, and there's a need for more support from the government to our frontline police. I'm confident that we have the right Commissioner and the right Police Minister in place to make sure that the report recommendations are implemented in full. The police review provides a roadmap and clear directions about what needs to happen to get an improved and more responsive Northern Territory Police Force. The community expects that police will have sufficient resources to be highly visible on our streets and play a greater role in preventing crime. Territorians expect a high level of service from their police force, and to ensure that happens, we will give the Northern Territory Police Force the resources it needs to be more responsive to the needs of the community. We will accept 15 out of the 18 recommendations contained within the police review. Accepting these recommendations will come at significant cost, and we will see unprecedented resources provided to the Northern Territory Police Force. We do not accept the recommendation to reduce police auxiliary or PALI coverage on bottle shops in the Territory, and we do not accept the recommendation to discontinue using private security services in relation to reducing antisocial behaviour. Nothing is more important to me than keeping Territorians safe, and that's why my government is not accepting these recommendations. We're taking a common sense approach to keeping Territorians safe, and we cannot accept those recommendations. The final recommendation that has been noted but not accepted by government is in relation to using private companies to transport prisoners. But I do want to personally thank all members of the police force, of the Northern Territory Police Force. You do an incredibly difficult job under immense pressure, and I do absolutely value the work that our Northern Territory Police they undertake every single day. But I will again thank Vince Kelly and his hard-working team who have provided a comprehensive report to the Northern Territory Government. So thank you to Vince and his team. This is a landmark report for police in the Northern Territory. There will be an implementation team that now will get to work around implementing the recommendations. Thank you.
Today is a really important day in our mission to provide more support to the Northern Territory Police Force, so they have the tools and support they need to do their job. Firstly, I'd like to also thank Vince Kelly and the remainder of the review team for the work he and his team have done on this report. It is detailed and it provides a really clear roadmap of things that need to change and where we need more support from government needs to be provided. I'd also like to thank every serving police officer within the Northern Territory Police Force. You do a really tough job. We want to show you that we'll give you the resources to do that job and that you have our full support. To all Territorians, this report shows that government needs to do more and support the police, and we will do that. There are confronting aspects of this report, and we're not shying away from the fact that this will be a tough job. Building up the Northern Territory Police Force will require a lot of hard work from government, hard work by the Commissioner, hard work by the Senior Executive, and continued hard work by every officer on the front line. We know that police have worked incredibly hard over many years, and we want to acknowledge that hard work and commitment to improving the structures and supports that are in place to help police do their job. More needs to be done to support police, and we'll do more. Importantly, we've accepted the vast majority of the recommendations of this review, 15 out of the 18 recommendations. The recommendations that have not been accepted are due to the government's determination and commitment to improving community safety across the Territory. We won't be getting rid of pallies, and we believe there is a role for private security to play in keeping parts of the Territory safe. We know that crime is a major issue for Territorians and Territory businesses. We'll be working hard day and night to ensure that crime is reduced across the Territory. Thank you. I'll hand to the Commissioner.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon. Obviously, really comprehensive report. I'd also like to thank Vince Kelly, APM and his team of hard-working police officers and other specialists who have worked tirelessly since August to prepare this report. It only seemed like yesterday we were standing here actually announcing the commission of the report. I thought I had a lot of work to do yesterday with the recommendations in this report. The police force and the community have an incredible amount of work to continue to do to deliver an improved policing model to the community into the future, improved workforce value, looking after our people, and importantly, really improved governance and corporate horsepower to make sure that police can do the important role they sign up for. The report's broken down into 4 chapters. Obviously, foundations of the future, restoring the front line, looking at our priorities, and importantly, well-being and retention of our hard-working officers. I'd like to thank all our hard-working police across the Northern Territory who work tirelessly every day in a really demanding environment. Thank you for all your efforts. I'd also like to recognise that over 500 officers actually responded for feedback to this report and this inquiry. So it's really significant in the fact that a lot of the content of this report is actually owned by the Northern Territory Police. It's their voices, you've been listened to, and you will make a difference for the future of the Northern Territory Police Force. What's really important is the chapter around well-being, investing in actually tangible action to look after our police force, look after our officers who are hurting. We see a large amount of them away from work at the moment due to psychological trauma. The important work through the implementation team about how we actually get those people back to work and look after them and minimise harms that our police officers experience every day. Also, the review of the disciplinary system, moving away from an archaic and outdated disciplinary system into a performance management framework so we can value our people and have those courageous conversations to make sure they're not inadvertently put through a really outdated process which causes them harm. It also mentions strengthening Indigenous pathways. I've set the aspirational target for 30% Indigenous representation in the police force so we reflect the community we serve, and actually strengthening pathways for leadership, success and innovation for the entire workforce, but particularly First Nations people. So it's a really exciting time. Lots of very comprehensive report, and once again thank you to the team and the workforce for the contributions you've made to make a difference to the Northern Territory Police Force and to serve our community better into the future. Thank you.
Chief Minister, do you think this report shows a failure of your government and therefore a failure to Territorians and the police force?
So this report is a absolutely comprehensive report. We accept that there are things that need to change, and we've already seen announcements that I've made around additional funding, additional resources for our police force. So Vince Kelly has done a great job. He's spoken to over 600 Territorians, about 500 through the police force. So of course, we accept the report. We accept that there are things in that report that are hard to read. It is an extensive report, but our government will now work around having an implementation team across government as well to implement those recommendations.
Just on the curfew, what influenced your decision to extend it by 6 days?
So that I've got advice from TEMSI. So TEMSI met late yesterday afternoon. I met with the Commissioner this morning and Andrew Kirkman, who co-chair TEMSI. They provided the advice that there'd been the summit yesterday afternoon. When I made that initial decision around the curfew, as we said, we didn't consult widely. We made sure that we put that summit in place this week. They heard from about 45 people from across Alice Springs yesterday. The overarching was that we need to keep the curfew in place, particularly over the school holidays. So it will end at 6 a.m. on the Tuesday morning. Monday's a pupil-free day, so it'll end on the Tuesday next week, the 16th. So it was around TEMSI advice. Tempsey now will continue to monitor the curfew like they have over the last 10 days or so. They'll continue to monitor it till 6 a.m. on Tuesday morning.
And do you have evidence on the success or otherwise of the 13 days that it's been in place?
Yeah, I mean, well, anecdotally, of course, I've been on the ground twice. I've been to Alice Springs for the last 2 weeks. I'm going down again on Thursday. The conversations on the ground from Alice Springs residents is this has been the best thing that's happened to Alice Springs. It really was a circuit breaker. People are feeling so much safer, so much more comfortable. But then from Territory Families, talking to the CEO, Emma White, it has been that some of those young people that have been picked up on the street, when they've taken them home, the families are saying, we want help around our kids. And so the anecdotal comments have been great. Also the data that the police have around the numbers, it started at 60, it dropped down to about 40. I think it went up a little bit over the weekend, but it's been great to see that those numbers have reduced, that there's about 30 kids on average. Maybe there's a small group that continuously are on the street, but then we're putting in services around that. So to me, the curfew has been a great success.
We know that independent schools like Yiperinya will go back before or after the end of the curfew. Was this factored into the decision?
No, it wasn't around specifically Yiperinya School. I met, though, with Gavin Morris on Friday when I was in Alice Springs, the principal of Yiperinya School. He's going to continue to have the school. He wants to continue like he has his Sunset School, but he just wants to continue his school 52 weeks of the year. That was the conversations we had. That school provides breakfast programs. It's got their the heart of the school where they support kids with trauma. Gavin's got some amazing programs in place, and he literally said he wants his school to be there every day of the week almost, 52 weeks of the year. So it is about that whole wraparound that school can support, let alone the literacy and numeracy outcomes.
You were going to use the curfew time to look for more long-term solutions, and some of the Indigenous leaders in Alice have said they've been, the federal government has been very prescriptive about how the 250 million would be spent, that there's not many new initiatives being funded with that. What other long-term solutions are you planning to provide now?
Well, I think we've been very clear about that. First of all, the $4 billion going into remote housing, that includes town camps. So there is more money across the Northern Territory to have upgrades to housing, to have new houses for families, which we know is vitally important, for health outcomes, also for educational outcomes. But we've literally doubled the education budget, so it's an extra $1.1 billion going into education. Alice Springs has had that additional $40 million that's gone in. We've had one term. Every one of those schools have a clear action plan around how the money's being spent. I've asked for those action plans to go up on the Education Department website, because there's a lot of good things happening in education, for example in Alice Springs, which is the generational long-term change that we need to see around these kids. So more than happy to have that out there and transparent and share that. So they're just a couple of the big initiatives that we've got. And dollars don't just mean better results, but dollars must mean better results as far as I'm concerned. That's that accountability to education, it's accountability around housing, to complete those houses, to get them hitting the mark with families.
Marion Scrimgeour wants to see family responsibility agreements for families who aren't getting their kids to school. Is that something your government would look at?
Yeah, we are. That was a conversation today. I had a community safety meeting this morning, and that has representatives from police, from Territory Families there, from Attorney Generals and Justice, and that was one of the agenda items, was around family responsibility agreements. So we have family safety agreements as well, which is sort of like the before you get to a family responsibility agreement. But yeah, we need to, and we all know that. I think everybody that I speak to in Alice Springs, even across the Territory, say that families need to be more responsible for their kids.
Community groups are worried that the Middle Arm development could contribute to harbour.
Hang on a second. I don't really want to talk about Middle Arm now. I'm going to be appearing before the Senate inquiry on Thursday. I'm very happy to talk about Middle Arm after that. Let's just talk about the curfew and the police report now. This is what Territorians want to hear about. I don't think they actually want to hear about Middle Arm right now, and I'm happy to talk on Thursday about Middle Arm.
The recommendations that have been listed have a number of dates for certain recommendations. When you say you've accepted these recommendations, will you implement them by those dates that Vince Kelly has listed?
Yes, so the implementation plan has to be done by June 24, so the implementation team will come to government with a comprehensive implementation plan by June 24. By June 25, pretty much they want all the recommendations implemented there. There'll be some that will be rolling, for example, the 200 extra police, but they'll put in place, that's what will need to be put in place around the recruitment plan, around how we get to that target of 200. There's an additional 71 unsworn officers in the report. So 71 public servants that will also go into the police force. So there will be a clear implementation plan that'll come to government on June 24. It will need to be all action by June 25. One of the key things of this report, it talks about an ECO4, so a high-level public servant that's not a sworn police officer, leading that corporate side in the police. So this was an organisational review of police, and that whole section around what they can do better, police around data, for example, around their HR, around budgeting, around making sure the business intelligence centre is working really well. That will be led by a high-level public servant that's not a police officer. That person will also have responsibility for making sure that the review is implemented in full.
Can I ask the police commissioner? Commissioner, did police on the ground see a noticeable difference under the curfew, and what was your advice to the government about extending it?
Yeah, so from the introduction to the curfew, we saw a noticeable decrease in crime types in and around the CBD. We saw some burglaries in the suburbs and at some commercial premises, but not on the scale we'd seen previous to the curfew. The feedback from police officers and the extra support provided is overwhelmingly positive. The community, having been in Alice Springs recently for a long period of time, the community welcome the activities of police, territory families and the other agencies that have been on the ground making a difference. The main thing we've seen is really the absence of youth coming in and showcasing their criminal behaviour in the CBD, and then really decreasing the risk to them and their harmful behaviours. I'm engaging with the youth every night. We've seen really low numbers of the same youth coming in, and they've really been engaging with the youth workers to be returned home. But what's been different on this occasion, the follow-up by territory families the following days, the actual families are asking for help about how they can better manage their children, and then that leads to pathways to education, school and the like. So it's really important that being on the ground and doing a sense check and listening to the community, listening to the workforce and those involved in this at the Emergency Operations Centre and the Regional Controller, because we are operating under an emergency situation, listening to the feedback and what difference it's making. So to make the determination to extend it is really the absence of crime and the success it's having at the moment. More time to allow for a transition period about what the future looks like at 6 a.m. Tuesday. It will be a continued police and territory families response in the short term to engage with that and look under the Care and Protection of Children Act. The education part and working with key stakeholders such as the Children's Commissioner and local voices and local leadership. We had a really positive summit in Alice Springs yesterday for a number of hours where a really large diverse crowd of local leaders came together and shared their views and opinions. So that youth advocacy and local leadership really needs to fill the voice outside of law enforcement into the future, and taking into account obviously school holidays as well. We've had the race cup this weekend and we've got Parchama this weekend as well, so a real conglomerate of things to consider, but it has made a significant difference to Alice Springs and the safety of the Alice Springs residents.
In terms of the recommendations, obviously there were a number that weren't accepted, specifically the NT corrections and private security. What was behind that decision to not accept those recommendations?
So the one around, first of all, the transporting of prisoners, that recommendation is one that we noted and have not accepted at the moment because we think there needs to be a lot more consideration around that. We have, and the Vince Kelly and his team looked at, and that's in the report, they looked at how WA does it, I think how New South Wales and South Australia. So that recommendation particularly was noted around not accepting now, but we do need to look into the possibilities of what can be done into the future. But we don't think that we have the resources to be able to do that right this moment. It's one that we need to spend some more time on. Around the security, we have seen an increase in private security in our shopping centres, for example, around our CBD in Darwin. It seems to work. It provides that reassurance also to Territorians to have security people there. Yes, there is a commitment to 200 police officers. That's over 4 years, so possibly in 4 years' time, when we have those additional 200 police officers, we may be able to withdraw security. But I think across Australia, across the world, we are seeing an increase in security, security people who are in those public spaces, just to reassure the public to be there. And often it isn't around extreme behaviour, but it's that niggling behaviour that you see around alcoholism as well. So we thought that the time was not right to be able to take away those private security guards. We think that's another one that we've noted, but we won't accept right now. It needs some more work.
Is that permanent palliative presence ending as of tomorrow? That's a concern that's been raised by...
No, so we will continue to have officers on our bottle shops in Central Australia. So again, that was a recommendation around removing pallies. We think that, and we know from the conversations that I've had, but we've heard loudly and clearly from Catherine and Alice Springs that they want to have a police presence, or they want to have a presence of an officer, whether that's a licensing officer, a sworn police officer at the bottle shops across Alice Springs. And so the Police Commissioner can probably talk more about that, but we'll continue that. To talk about pallies?
Yeah, so from now until the immediate future, there'll still be a uniformed officer at the 9 takeaway outlets in Alice Springs during their training hours. We'll continue to work with licensing very closely, and they'll be engaging with us at licensed premises. Obviously working with the BDR, working with on-premise consumption of alcohol, which we see is quite harmful in Alice Springs as well, working with industry, hospitality and tea. They had a liquor accord meeting yesterday. They're working closely with us about how we can remedy alcohol-related harm as well. But you will see police officers continue to be present at each location across the bottle shop. Our mobility, we had 4 locked down permanently, with the other 5 with a mobile patrol. The permanent presence is more effective. We've heard the community loud and clear on that, and our job is to reduce harm. We'll continue that for the immediate future, but the pallies who sign up to be constables, are recruit constables, they'll be returning to Darwin to complete their training and graduate on the 29th of June.
Commissioner, the Kelly Review points out serious dysfunctions in the police executive over the last 10 years. You've held very senior roles over that time. Can you explain why you think you're the best person to change this, and how you go about doing that after being involved for that many years?
Yeah, I think I've been a member of the police force for a quarter of a century, Chris, and I think it's about learning. And yes, we have had some challenges across the police force from 2014. It's about learning from those experiences, and that enhances your leadership, and it's about doing the right thing for the community and growing into the position to make sure that you serve as the Commissioner or the Deputy Commissioner or the Assistant Commissioner.
Well, you saw all this dysfunction happening in the executive over 10 years.
Yeah,
Can you comment on that?
And it was addressed.
In terms of this review, Commissioner, is there anything that was surprising or extremely disappointing at you that was unveiled in the review?
No, extremely disappointing, not at all. I think this is, like we say, this is a new beginning for the future of the police force. It's, I've said it before, it's listening to our workforce, and that's one thing that's really important, because they're going to help shape the future. It's listening to the community as well about what we need to do for the future to make it the best police force we can. Attract people to join the force, importantly keep people in the force with our retention, keep attrition low, value our people, change how we're doing things, but importantly listen to our people about what's best for the community and how we serve the community in the most efficient manner.
You're obviously reasonably new to the role still. Do you think a change of leadership should have come sooner? Obviously we've seen there's still a number of changes that need to happen.
Yeah, I'm not going to look at history too much. I think we just need to focus on the future now. We've got the investment from government. $570 million over 5 years is really significant. So it's about looking at the resource footprint and all the recommendations in the report to invest in our workforce and better serve the community.
Commissioner, what do you think about the government not accepting some of those recommendations, the pallies and the private security?
Look, that's the decision for the government. What I need to do as a Commissioner is continue to challenge the status quo and look at the best way we can do business most efficiently. But we'll continue to explore about prisoner escort management. That's a huge time consumer for our police officers operating over 1.4 million square kilometres. It's about continued work for the best model with licensing to look at the safe sale of alcohol, which is a lawful and regulated product. The use of security guards, they do actually value add because they add general deterrence and disruption to criminal behaviour and an intelligence provider for us. So I think, we'll work through that. And the best thing is continue to look at the status quo, change things, see how we can better deliver service for policing so it's the best, delivery with public money.
Chief Minister, at that summit yesterday, those stakeholders, were they suggesting some long-term or medium-term solutions post the curfew? And are you going to look into some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So you had 45 people who absolutely are passionate about Alice Springs, and I met with a lot of them over the last couple of visits that I've had to Alice Springs, and furiously take notes around that, of course. And so some of the things that they identified were long-term solutions around what we need to do in Alice Springs. Some of them around are immediate, and the high visibility of policing is one that comes up often, and so we'll work with police around what we can do to continue that high visibility policing. But yes, that work now, all of the information that came from the summit, from our meetings over the last few days, the conversations over the last few weeks, will now form a plan that will be led by the Department of Chief Minister. Later in this week, I'll be talking around what's next, basically after the curfew. So yes, it is about listening to the people on the ground. So whether that's Lura-Tipper, Congress, educational leaders in the town, school principals, the broad range that were at the summit, it's important to be able to hear their views.
Chief Minister, in relation to the middle arm, are you saying that the government's only willing to focus on one issue at a time?
Oh, Jane, I was just thinking that the thousands of people who might be watching this, I think are more interested into hearing about the police report, that is now available online for Territorians. So the full report is going online that Territorians can all read about, or the curfew. But I'm very happy to take a question on middle arm. It's something that I'm determined and passionate about. I will be before the Senate inquiry on Thursday, and I'll be speaking very strongly around how important middle arm is to the economy of the Northern Territory and to Territorians.
Chief Minister, why wasn't Vince Kelly here today to answer questions?
I think there'll be opportunities today. It was around the government accepting this report. I think there'll be opportunities for him to do media over the next few days.
Just a question for the Police Commissioner. Do we have an updated number of the amount of youth who've been moved out of the Alice Springs CBD? And we also just heard from the Chief Minister that number's been tracking down. Could you provide a bit more detail on that?
Yeah, when we first started the curfew, we were sitting around about between 50 and 60 every 24-hour period. It dropped off towards the end of last week to upper 20s. We saw it about 35 around the weekend, but it's sitting around 29 again. So the numbers have decreased, and like I said, the amount of people returning are quite low. Some nights there's only really 5 to 10 of the same kids the youth workers engaging with. It's been really positive. There's been a high number of, it's a high level of compliance. They're engaged in conversation, and they get offered a lift home, they go home with youth workers, and we haven't made any arrests in relation to, curfew related activities or non-compliance. There's been a handful of arrests in relation to, the non-adherence to court orders and bail and other criminal damage in the CBD, but that's about it, so it's been pretty good.
And what sort of activity are you seeing in the town camps and in the suburbs outside the CBD area lately?
We still see houses being broken into and cars stolen. We had a couple of youths last week. We've seen, as early as this morning, 3 youths out near the Gap try and break into a house, and one young person was armed with showed a knife under his clothes. We responded really quickly. We've effected 3 arrests. I think it was 13, 14 and 15. The 15-year-old remains in custody. So the response time with additional police resources there is really swift. And just that presence, that high visibility is really deterring some of the crime types as well.
Chief, you say the decision to not accept the PALI recommendation is about public safety, but the recommendation is just that these private companies that are making profit off alcohol should have to fund it themselves. So can you explain a bit more about the decision that we should continue committing public resources to this?
I think Territorians expect to see somebody in a uniform in front of a bottle shop rather than a security guard. But again, this is a recommendation that we might implement over time. It's one where right now, we think Alice Springs, Katherine, Tennant Creek in particular, people want to see a uniformed officer in front of a bottle shop, and I think the feedback that we've had over the last few weeks indicates that. There's been a lot of conversations around pallies. The police commissioner, when he took those pallies and was working towards them becoming constables, we heard loudly and clearly from that community. So it might be one, like the other two recommendations, where we consider that over time, but the time isn't right now to take pallies off bottle shops.
The review doesn't seem to suggest increase of ALOs or interpreters or cultural awareness training for police. Is that an oversight?
I think the recommendation that looks at, and I think it's recommendation 17, or one of the I think it's 17, does talk around the culture of the organisation and around cultural safety, so it does. The Commissioner's also spoken around making sure that they get to 30% of the police force be Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. I think also the report, when it talks about the ALOs and the ACPOs, particularly the ALOs though, it talks about how valuable they are and the information and the support that they provide to police.
So you don't need an increase in any of those or in interpreters?
Ask the Commissioner.
Yeah, thanks, yeah, absolutely increase in the Aboriginal Community Police Officer, the Aboriginal Liaison Officer pathway. We continually increase our recruitment to the Aboriginal Liaison Officer. When we reach the target, we double it. I've set the aspirational target to go from 13% now to 30%, and that will be a mixture of the Aboriginal Liaison Officers. And at the summit yesterday, we talked about graduating pathways from night patrols into ALOs and to Aboriginal Community Police Officers. We want to see them graduate into constables and future leaders in the police force. So it's a pretty aggressive target, but we're up for it. And that will be a big increase in numbers across the First Nations people in the police force, which then reflects the community we serve.
Will that include interpreters as well? For the
interpreters don't sit in the police force. That's in a different government agency, but we use them from time to time. And I might be wrong, but we're the second largest Indigenous employer in the Northern Territory Government, and the first one obviously is the interpreter service.
Chief Minister, if the situation deteriorates again in Alice Springs or elsewhere, such as Katherine or Tennant Creek, will you look to reinstate another curfew?
Yeah, I've said that. I've said that previously. I think we've seen just how well accepted a curfew was in the community of Alice Springs. So if we need to do that, we will do that.
Average arrival times for priority levels within the police and people calling 000 have skyrocketed over the past 5 years. Why should Territorians feel confident that they will get help when they call 000 with numbers like this?
Job plus to the Police Commissioner and give him a chance here. A Police Commissioner or Police Minister? Let the Minister have a go.
Yeah, the times are too high, but what we have seen is an increase in domestic family violence. We have, however, over the period of about 6 years, seen an increase in the numbers, about 218 police officers over our period of time. We've got a track record of delivering those officers. We'll deliver 200 more. To get a better response time, we need to address the factors that cause the disadvantage, the DV that we see that is taking all the time our frontline officers, but also increase the available pool of frontline officers, and we see that with the 200 commitment and also the 52 for the Territory Safety Division. So it is unacceptable, but more officers and addressing the causes that lead to the dysfunction and poverty and then DV and the like, we'll get a better response.
How quickly can we see those numbers come down? Because at the moment they're unacceptable for people trying to get immediate help.
Well, by June you're going to see 52 officers in the Territory Safety Division, which will primarily target the antisocial behaviour, bail compliance and support to general duties, but you'll also see those 25 extra call takers that we committed to. So getting a faster call taken leads to a faster allocation of the resource to a unit, and having more units available, we'll see a faster response to the person that's called it through.
Minister, was there some sort of arrangement with Hospitality MT or the liquor industry not to charge them for the police presence on the bottle shops?
No, and I think if you go and look at the Riley review, it's made it very clear that they should be. But what we see right now is that Territorians, and specifically those in Alice Springs and Katherine, want to see pallies remain. But as the Chief Minister's made very clear, we'll look at it over the 4-year period. But right now, you need a uniform member, whether it's a pally, a fully sworn constable, or a licensing inspector. Someone needs to be on those bottle shops.
Why does an industry pay for it?
Just about to get to it. We have a very handsome buyback scheme going at the moment, and those bottle shops that want to sell their licence should be coming to the table and have that discussion, because as we progress over time, those are the pieces we can look at with Hospitality MT.
We're already the most police state by far. This is calling for a lot more resources into police. Are you concerned about this trend?
I think in the short term we have to put more resources into the front line, but we've made it very clear that we have a long-term commitment to addressing the disadvantage that we see across remote Northern Territory, and the federal government. It's great to see them putting money into housing and education that we've co-contributed to, and that's how we get the long-term change. But in the short term, we need more police. We're getting more calls to police, and we're seeing an increase in crime, which every Territorian knows, and it's the number one issue. So we're going to put more money into it.
Was there anything in the review that you as Police Minister were, shocked or concerned to see?
No, everything that's in that review has been pieces that have been relayed to me in different channels through the police force, whether it's the ride-alongs, talking to the executive. I mean, the Commissioner has been doing a lot of this review and change already since he took over, and that's evident with the announcements we made around the budget, because he knew when he came in what was needed. We've been working it through, and Vince and the team have done a fantastic job articulating what the front line are thinking, and some of those fresh ideas that you'll see come through the report around getting the admin team to take over some of the admin burden for the front line to get them back out faster, and that'll be a trial that'll come out.
If it wasn't a surprise, why weren't other measures put in place sooner than a review being released?
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted confidence in the review team. The review team needed to go and consult with everyone. If we were to start making significant machinery changes to the department whilst doing the review, it would negate the purpose of the review. And I think now we can stand here with an independent police review and say, this is what needs to be done, government's committed to it, and we'll implement it, as we said, the 15 of the 18 recommendations.
The review says that private security funding should go instead to the Territory Safety Division. Why is that not a better option?
I think we need to have both at the moment, and I think you talk to most frontline officers, having the security there allows security to deal with the menial stuff, moving people on that may cause a disturbance later, and deal with some of that low-level antisocial behaviour. The Territory Safety Division will be up in June, and they will work hand in glove with the security providers, and it is that organisation or that command that deals with the funding around private security. And there are further recommendations in the report around where the funding should sit, but ultimately right now we need as many assets on the ground dealing with community safety as we can possibly get to make sure Territorians feel safe and see that visible presence.
Any other questions?
Thank you.